years apart, and also some human bones associated with the earlier one, as well as the final one with these two skeletons. Now, how were these cities destroyed? I've been talking about earthquake activity and so on. Well, the schematic here kind of gives us a view of this region. We see the valley area and how it is sunk down much lower than the surrounding land on either side. And this is that rift valley that we've been talking about, this sunken area. And on either side of the valley, we have these fault lines, very unstable areas that shift. And so this whole thing here is kind of a floating block, if you will, and moves and shifts. And that, of course, is earthquake activity. The sites we've been talking about, Babadra and Numira and Safi and so on, they are located precisely on this eastern fault line. Now, many years ago, back in the 1920s, a geologist by the name of Fred Clapp went to this area with the idea that he was going to try to determine what caused the destruction of the cities of the plain. Now, at that time, he didn't know exactly where they were located. He thought they were located somewhere around the Dead Sea, and so that's where he focused his research. He found no evidence for volcanic activity, but he did find evidence for petroleum products in this area. And in fact, the Israelis have done a lot of work, a lot of drilling south of the Dead Sea on their side, and found oil deposits all over. Just, I guess, not big enough yet to make them commercially viable. But there's plenty of evidence for petroleum deposits and sulfur deposits. And in fact, part of Steve Austin's time in Israel, when he went with us, was spent in the government geology library getting these reports about all this oil and sulfur and so on. So he has a lot of that information. So Frederick Clapp came up with the theory that the destruction was caused by this area here sinking down even lower as a result of movement of the surface of the earth. That put pressure on petroleum deposits down in the earth, and that material was forced up the fault line, then ignited by spark or something, and then just came raining down on these cities. Well, now that we know where the sites are located, that theory really does make a lot of sense, because they're exactly on that fault line. And in fact, other geologists have studied the area and have come up with the exact same explanation. And Steve Austin told us that this is something that happens quite regularly. When an earthquake causes pressure on oil deposits, they're forced up out of the ground, and they come up in the flaming oil coming out of the ground. Just a couple more shots to show you the difference between the valley and then the plateau where the cities are located. The sharp demarcation at the fault line right here and along this cliff. This is at Sodom. And then on the right, this is Numira. There's the site located up there, and this is the fault line running along the edge there. And so that is a very plausible explanation for how God destroyed these cities. Now, Brian had mentioned the texts at Ebla that actually mention Sodom and Gomorrah. Ebla up here in northern Syria, and a great archive of, 8,000, 10,000 documents, something like that, was discovered in a library that's been reconstructed as you see it here. And one of those tablets, called the Geographical Atlas, has a list of places that evidently the merchants went to when they were selling their goods. They manufactured furniture, cloth, metal, weapons, and so on, and they would sell these goods throughout the area. And evidently, one of their itineraries brought them here into Canaan, and the list comes down through central Canaan here, comes over to the Dead Sea, comes down to the southern part of the Dead Sea, and then up along the eastern side. And here I have just a few of the names. We have Ein Gedi, 207 over here, Southwest Dead Sea Circuit coming around the southern end, Dead Sea Shore at Admah, and then we have town of Admah down here at the southern end, and then number 211, Sodom, which would be our site at Babadra. So we have 2 of the 5 cities of the plain named on this text from Ebla. Now this text would date hundreds of years before Abraham and Lot. It's about 2300 BC or so. There's some disagreement on the precise date. Sometime around 2300 BC. So it's about at least 200 years before Abraham. And evidently, at that time, there were only 2 of those cities in existence here. Now, we know Numerah was not in existence because it was only in existence for about 100 years, from about 2170 down to 2070. So, at the time the tablet was written up, Numerah was not in existence, and evidently the other places weren't either, only Admah and Sodom. And as I mentioned, we have the archaeological evidence to show that Sodom goes back even earlier than this text from Ebla. So a place that scholars said is simply a myth and a legend, the merchants from Ebla were doing business there and selling goods to the people of Sodom. Not Gomorrah, it's not mentioned, but Sodom and Admah. So once again, we see that archaeology backs up the Bible and shows the truth of these accounts, which at first, when we read them, it sounds a little puzzling. Could fire really come down from heaven? But we have the archaeological evidence to show that, yes, buildings were burned from the roof down. And so it all lines up and shows that all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on Sodom and Gomorrah? No questions.
No questions. I answered them all, huh?
Has the change overtaken as far as what you're seeing in your pictures today with no vegetation? Has it changed over the centuries that way?
Did they have trees? I mean, how did they have materials for building?
Yeah, the question is about the vegetation and how dry the land is today. Well, there's definitely been a change in the climate. There was more rainfall in the days of Abraham than today. So that's one major change.